Okay, so the headline, and usually, and I know we have one of the contributors and one of the actual journalists from HousingWire. Usually, HousingWire is not very clickbaity. We love HousingWire, but this one is. It's volume hungry mortgage lenders loosen credit standards. What do you immediately think of, Ray?
I immediately think of the crash,
Right?
which is, but they're not saying in the headline. To be fair to James, who wrote the article, they're not saying in the headline, market is going to crash because of volume. Yeah. Okay. So it's actually well crafted in how they
okay. I get that. Yeah. Very well. Sorry, just kicked my cat. My apologies. So because the article doesn't really cover there's a little blurb kind of at the end where they mention that they are either loosening up or thinking about loosening up or leading to loosening up kind of thing. But this is a really number heavy and percentage heavy article, which sometimes HousingWire can be. And you heard Logan. That dude knows his numbers, obviously. So if you want going over to HousingWire, you can see this, and the title is Volume Hungry Mortgage Lenders Loosen Credit Standards. So mortgage credit availability increased by 2.2% in April as mortgage lenders fight for borrowers in an increasingly competitive market. The Mortgage Bankers Association said Tuesday that the Mortgage Credit Availability Index, didn't know that was a thing, but now I do, that the MCAI increased to 128.1 last month. A decline in the MCAI suggests that lending standards are tightening, while a higher number suggests loosening credit standards. The MCAI on conventional loans increased 4.8%, while MCAI on government loans increased 0.1%, so not really an increase. Of the two component indices of the conventional MCAI, the jumbo MCAI, I'm saying MCAI a lot.
I mean, yeah.
There's a lot. Maybe Matt can track it, and as he'll put on the screen 1, 2, 3. But of the two components indices, jumbo increased 6.9%. There's a joke there if you want it. And the conforming MCAI rose 12.6%. So again, rising means they're loosening standards. Following the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau's, this is kind of the big point here. Following the CFPB's retiring of the Appendix Q patch. Do we all remember what that is, Ray?
Yep.
The debt to income ratio is 43%, all that stuff, right? Some of the biggest wholesale mortgage lenders have introduced or loosened terms on their prime jumbo products. Rocket Mortgage and United's wholesale mortgage have rolled out jumbo products that go up to $2 million, $2 million amounts, and can be used for primary homes and investment properties. That's kind of a big one. In recent months, several depository banks that tighten lending standards during the Rona have indicated that they have or will soon loosen underwriting requirements to capture the rise in purchase business in the non-conforming space. So it's kind of, again, if you want, go over to HousingWire, but you see where the article, it's well crafted, but it's not really.
Yeah, it's hard. So
you don't have to show income to get a loan right now. It's nothing crazy like that. It's more non-conforming stuff.
It's not a no-doc stated income loan. Those were cool.
It's not a liar loan, no.
So, I mean, it's an interesting, in a way, I think it's probably healthy that some of the standards are loosened, but at the same time, I don't, a lot more buyers is not something I see the market needing. So that
goes back to kind of the Biden credits and the Biden tax credits, right, and the grants and all that stuff. That's helping buyers. We need to do something for sellers, man.
Yeah, what are we going to do for sellers?
Right.
Yeah, don't evict the sellers out of their home. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't think it's going to have a huge impact. It doesn't look like a big move one way or the other. It just looks like probably kind of a normal thing as the economy starts to recover, and maybe it was some loosening of the constraints compared to what they tightened last year due to COVID.
Well, yeah, and remember the Rona, so I think informationally for agents and even for consumers out there, we're doing our job by getting this info out there. But the biggest thing to remember, I think, Ray, you just mentioned it, a year ago, maybe a little less than a year ago, they were getting so busy, they were tightening their standards. So I think this is just kind of the tail wagging, right? Like, this is the other side. Well, okay, we want a little more business again, so we're going to loosen that, but it's not on all products.
It was almost a year ago to the month. Is that a thing? I just made that a thing. It was a year ago to the month that lenders were telling me that they were swamped and that appraisers were starting to get backed up, and and it wasn't because of purchase activity, it was because of refinance activity. And we talked about a lot of lenders at that time tightening their lending constraints because they would only want the best ones, and they only want the best ones to be able to do the refis. And they were also tightening their constraints to get people to stop applying for mortgages. So
and it wasn't
the MCAI number is not one that I track often, but I would love to go back to last year and see what that number was compared to what it is now, and see if maybe it's just kind of a return to some kind of normalcy as far as where the market is.
And and remember, it was their own. A lot of private lenders were like, okay, usually it's 580 credit score or 620 credit score. Now we want only 680 and up.
Maybe Logan knows. Let me ask Logan.
Okay, so
Logan,
this is actually my area that I gave probably the most interviews on because of the MBA index. Nice. It is slightly flawed, and if you actually go back to like 2005, you can see it just went parabolically up in terms of loose lending standards. What happened last year in March is that we had like a little mortgage market meltdown. The certain lenders could not lend because their investors weren't backing them up. So you had about 4.5 to 6.2% of loans that could have been done before March 9th that got tightened. Because what happens in every recession is credit tightens up. Now, this was like the dream for the housing bears. They wanted credit to tighten up so housing could crash. And I got to tell you, man, there are some crazy people on Clubhouse that are housing bubble boys, by the way. And what occurred is that you only had a slight tightening on products that weren't very used much, like some bank statement loans, some jumbo products. So in theory, it was tight on that index, but not really to the loans that were given, because is credit tight with all the originations we saw last year with purchases and refinances? No. Mm-hmm. So on paper, that index looks like credit is still tight and it's going to loosen up and things. It doesn't have really much value either way because it's a marginal low utilization product that they're working off from. So it's a bit misleading that it looks like, well, credit is getting easier or credit is getting tighter. There was no real tight credit during the crisis in bigger fashion. What we saw in 2002 to 2005 is that there were loans being done as bigger portions of the loan balances that were given. And that credit got extremely tight because you had 80-20, 80-20, 80-10-10, option arms, IO, all those things. We don't have that. Pretty much majority of Americans just get 30-year fixed, very boring loans, which is a good thing. And that market was clear. So last year when things were busy, because of refinances, because, let's say people couldn't close them, that's a different subject than lenders getting tight. Like some lenders actually shut down because they had no investors to back them up. Very small portion of the marketplace. So when this index actually rises again, it's not much of a story, just like it falling down during the crisis. It wasn't much of a story either.
So there you go. One of the things I love about Logan is what I think on platitudes he actually shares with real data. So that's amazing. I'd love to have you on here, and thank you for outing the Clubhouse. Did you call them Fallout Boys? Oh, Crash Boys.
Crash Boys.
No,
Crash Bros.
It was the Housing Bubble Boys, and then I gave them the new term, the Forbearance Crash Bros.
Yeah.
And oh my, like I go into some of these rooms and like literally, these are not data people. You could just see by how they talk that none of them have ever looked at a census data in their lifetime. And that's the problem, is that they don't, like, the things that drive housing economics. I mean, economics itself is demographics and productivity, and like the rest is stamp collecting. But housing is driven by demographics and rates. And none of these people actually looked at a census data. You could just see by how they talk and how they refer. So when they went into the 2016, 17, 18, 19 bubble phase, and it didn't happen, then 2020 happened. So they all had to go in. So you can't blame them. This was supposed to be their crash. And then guess what happened? The exact opposite. So I think for me, it's like everyone has to defend their own keep. This was my whole economic model for like a long time. Like years 2020 to 2024 is going to be different because you've got the best housing demographic patch ever and you have the lowest mortgage rates ever. So you have to worry about home prices taking off. This concept does not go with the bubble boys, because think about it. If you're grifting that for 6-7 years and this happens, what does it make you look like? Maybe the worst talented group of people we've ever had in our history. That's that's kind of my gig here about showing people why they were wrong. Because it's like we all get it. They whiffed. But if you don't explain why they got it wrong, it doesn't do anybody any good. It's just like, if stock goes up, stock goes down, who cares? But why they were wrong means that the future generations of people could understand that demographics really matter, and the U.S. has an advantage over everyone, because we have a younger workforce. Look at the jobs data. Job openings, 8.1 million. The thing was at 2 million in 2008. Leading economic index, retail sales, everything is much better this time because people are stuck in 2008, but the economy moved past them. That means we left all these people behind 12 years ago, and they can't give it up because doom and gloom sells, trash sells. Yeah. And now it's like, well, we are just now in this early expansion, and we're just going to talk about the next crash is going to come. And this is just part of the process that we all have to live with in a social media 5-second headline world. But there are people out there who believe that math, facts, and data matter, and that the rest is kind of storytelling.
Yeah, you guys need to be sure to follow Logan. Click on if you're in the Clubhouse group, just click on his face and hit the follow, and then hit the bell icon, because there are a lot of people on Clubhouse that are grossly misleading exactly what's happening. And you can look up Logan also on Twitter. It's LoganMohTashami. So be sure you guys follow him on Clubhouse. And there was somebody, Logan, on Clubhouse that dropped into a room, and she was a real estate agent that claimed all these expertise and investments and everything. And she had like 14,000 followers. So I'm like, oh, okay, maybe she kind of knows what she's talking about. And she was one of your Crash Bros. And she just went on and on and on about how the market's crashing, it's going down. And a lot of us were kind of mentioning all these, very positive demographic changes and what's happening, what's actually happening. And the answers were very shallow and thin. And it drove me crazy because yes, and here she is with like 14,000 people like listening to what she's saying. So if you guys want to actually hear the truth, definitely follow Logan, follow his articles on HousingWire, and be sure to tune into the Bearded Men Real Estate Show, because
Well, and amazingly enough, there's no left or right, up or down, black or white. There's just numbers. He's just presenting the data, and here's the interpretation of the data. It's not you can't leave it up for opinion. This is the data. I think that point he made about was it 2 million job openings in 2008? Now there's 8.1 million or whatever it is. I mean, that's a tiny indicator right there of where the economy's at.
What was that, Logan? Go ahead.
Here's one thing here's one thing. I think I know who that person is. There's when the U.S. economy was recovering in the midpoint of last year, everybody started sending me YouTube videos of all these people who were talking about crash. And I'm just going to say this. If they actually really believed in their own stuff, all of them would have sold their homes last year and this year, right? Because you're going to be the person that's going to catch the Case-Shiller index when it's down to the 200-day moving average, right? These are not, they don't even believe their own stuff. That's how you have to look. Like, nobody's this bad. Like, no American citizen is really this bad unless they're lying for clickbaits. That's the one thing you could talk about. So the best way for me to explain it, to make sense, is that post 1996, it's very rare in the United States of America to have less than 4 million home sales. So because mortgage rates went lower, adjusting to population, the workforce grew, so you had an extra layer of demand. It's only happened 3 times. 2 of them are like one-off events, COVID 1-month sales, the aftermath of the tax credit. In 2008, we had a few months that were under 4 million. That was the beginning of the kind of the weaker demographic patch rolling into 2020. Mm-hmm. What these people are talking about is that you can have the best housing demographics ever recorded in history with the lowest mortgage rates ever recorded in history. People are not that crazy. Right? Nobody in their my people are like PhD economists that work for housing shops, and we sit there and we're thinking, like, what are they looking at? You're looking at a 2.5 to 3 million sales decline within a year. That didn't even happen even during the bubble crash, because they can't sell their websites talking about data. Because let me tell you, I am boring as you get. Like, my stuff will put you to sleep better than any kind of hardcore liquor out there. But if you actually show people, because guess what? The whiff happened, right? 2020, 2021, we're pretty much, for the most part, are almost done. So how do they get it wrong? Because they don't believe in economic models. And if you don't believe in economic models, you're grifting. So this was the big whiff. Like, we had people talking about bubbles, which means like a 60 or 70% decline in 1 year, going back to 2012 levels. We've had we're going to have 20% increases. This means that some of these people have missed by 80 to 90% in some of their home price calls. You can't.
That's a phenomenal point.
you can't be that bad. Like, nobody's that bad unless you're professionally lying. And then it makes sense. So it's all an act. This is why these stock traders you see on CNBC, the Fed, I'm bearish, inflation. They're all long the markets, right?
Yeah.
People can't talk without trolling the United States of America, because that's what gains attention. Boring people like myself, no. And if we actually try to run a business model like that, it wouldn't work. So the problem, they got caught, right? And that's the thing. They got caught, and now they don't know. So I'm telling you, I know some of these people, they're all lying. They don't even believe any of this stuff, but they can't sell their information if they say, well, housing is just going to have very stable demand, and we're probably going to be at 6.2 million total sales, new and existing homes, for a few years, and until mortgage rates rise. It'll be a very stable, boring market. Who wants to hear that stuff, right? But
there's two opposing business models at play. One is a business model in which people are selling content to media aggregates who then sell that content against advertising. And the other business model are people that are actually in business in the economy. And it's just a different business model. If I'm looking at the data differently than what they're looking at it, and some of them, like you said, are just lying. They're not even looking at the stuff. They're not even data people, because they're not trying to make money off of it like that. I'm trying to make money off of guiding people through the buying and selling of homes. I'm trying to make money through helping agents interpret what's happening in the marketplace to position themselves for success. And if you're looking at the headlines, those people are focused on a totally different business model. So it doesn't make sense. Like you're saying, Logan, you're one who's actually focused on, I'm going to give this information to people so they can help make decisions about their lives, not I need to figure out how to sell this. So it's a very different model. So thanks again.
Just remember, it's really hard to be off by 75% on home prices in 2 years. Like, do you know how crazy you have to be to say, well, this is a bubble, so this is going to crash back to 2012 levels, and guess what? We had a 20% home price gain. That's a 75 to 80% miss on their forecast.
This full swing there.
People just usually aren't that off.
So this is a clip that I'm going to totally take out and put in my next Susie Orman video. So that's good, Logan. Thank you.
And by the way, Susie Orman has 650,000 followers just on Facebook alone. I'm on her page now. 650,000 people. And by the way, if you follow, you get notifications when they post. You don't just like it. When you like something, you don't get it. So that means, because she has 591,000 likes, but 650,000 people follow it. And it may be a bunch of us realtors that are just waiting for the next horrible prediction she made, because a year ago she said that the housing market will crash by 50%, which 12 years ago we keep talking about that was 19%. She's saying that it's going to be almost 3 times that, and still has 650,000 followers. So to go along with what Logan's saying, it's insane to me that people follow it and follow this person's advice, and if she were correct, if she believed her own advice, why didn't she sell all of her assets? Why?
Yeah, Mario Flores says, y'all should see the misinformation on TikTok. It's crazy. Yeah, that's true.
No, you should not. Do not go on TikTok, especially for that. That stuff isn't. Every now and then someone will send something to me. Like, did you see this? Can't even believe what people are saying on there. And people are like, oh, this is great info. Share. Oh my God.
What'd you say, Logan?
The reality is that most Americans don't care what these people say, because housing is the cost of shelter to your own capacity to own a debt. So Americans aren't soft people that get persuaded by like gypsy cults that are running around. So within 5 to 6 weeks during a pandemic, more people bought homes in 2020 and 21 than any period from 2008 to 2019. because they're just looking for a home to live in. And no Susie Orman or no Bubble Boys or no Gold Bugs or whatever. None of that really matters because Americans are not soft, whiny people sitting and listening to crash cult people listen. And that's what 2020 to 2021 was important, right? This was a shot at all the conspiracy theory people for many years who said America's going to collapse, we're about to flex our American muscle against the world. Like we're the only country, a mature economy, that has a growing prime age labor force. China doesn't have it. Japan doesn't have it. Europe doesn't have it. Like, it's us. We're the superpower here. And 2020 and 21 on a historical basis will be remembered, especially from people that looked at COVID and said, this is the beginning of the second depression and everything. Within 5-6 weeks, things started to come back. And it's on a historical basis. When you go back 100 years, part of my whole America's Back economic model recovery that I wrote last April 7th, for HousingWire, is we needed to record this so these people get shot up in history as, oh my God, you remember grandma? Grandma said like home prices are going to crash 60% and unemployment rates are going to go. They have to be remembered because advantage, disadvantage. You get the advantage of trolling the US, but the disadvantage is that if you make the biggest mistake ever recorded in history, you should be remembered by that. Name and face and statement, boom, and it's over, guys. Recession was over. That's it. We're on. We're early in expansion. This was the biggest whiff in history. There's no other time that we could actually model. I've actually looked back. Were so many people that were this wrong? No. And it's good for the country. It's good for our children and our grandchildren to remember this because education does pay off. Reading pays off. And looking at numbers and data actually does have some value.
Speak to my heart. That's good. You need a different picture of you on Clubhouse, Logan. You need one of you dropping the mic. That was fantastic.
Yeah, I get goosebumps when he talks, and I forget that I'm doing a show with
the economist talks.
Yeah, I love it because I forget I'm doing a show when he starts talking. I'm just like, I just feel lucky and privileged to hear this stuff directly from a man who pulls all of this data and puts it into articles for us.